Not in my backyard, not in my street, not in my town. That's what we all thought on April 2nd. But on April 3rd, all eyes turned to San Bruno with the news of an active shooter on the YouTube campus. An estimated 19.8% of Californians own guns. That's 1 in every 5 people. I know it sounds high, but it's actually one of the lowest percentages in the nation. It's time for all of us to learn a little bit more about the guns in our backyard. What are the gun laws in San Mateo County? Are they the same as the state? How do the local gun laws correspond to federal laws? Which law takes precedence? Are there changes on the way? To answer these questions and more, we have Al Serrato, Assistant District Attorney of San Mateo County, as our guest. So thank you, Al, for joining us.
Our pleasure, thank you.
So what are the gun laws in San Mateo County?
Well, there's a whole variety of laws that control guns. And we start off obviously with the general idea that the Second Amendment protects gun ownership in some settings, but the state has a right to regulate it, and it does. So they break down into some categories. There are classes of people that are prohibited from possessing guns, felons, for instance, people with certain misdemeanor violations, people that are subject of a gun violence restraining order, things like that. And then there are use type of violations. So carrying a concealed weapon, carrying a loaded weapon, brandishing a firearm, shooting a firearm from a car, shooting at a car, shooting at a house. There are a wide variety of laws that we enforce. And then finally, there are enhancements to crimes. So a crime that can be committed without a gun, like robbery, if a person uses a gun, will face additional punishment and a greater sentence as a result of that.
So it sounds like the laws are pretty much state laws, right?
Yeah, those are state laws.
Yeah. And are there any county laws that we should be aware of, or sometimes jurisdictions, cities have their own ordinances.
Sure.
I can't think of any, but
yeah, I mean, counties can develop ordinances. A lot of times you see them more relating to where a gun shop might be opened or affecting the sale. For the most part, for us in the San Mateo County DA's office, we're implementing state law. There's not a lot of county enforcement for the kinds of crimes that we're dealing with.
You touched on it a little bit already about using a gun while committing a crime.
Right.
Can you go a little bit more detail on that?
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things we focus on most aggressively, just because of the risk, the public safety risk there. So there are enhancement laws that could make a life sentence out of a crime that wouldn't otherwise be a life sentence. So, for instance, a person who's committing a robbery or a residential burglary, who discharges a firearm and causes great bodily injury to a victim, will be facing a 25 to life sentence potentially as a result of that. And there's a range of punishment depending on what's done. You know, what kind of weapon is it? Is it being used? Is it being actually discharged in addition to using it, by which I mean, pulling it out or displaying it? And are you causing injury as a result of discharging the gun? So there's quite a variety of it.
Right. And do you have any idea of how many cases involve illegal guns?
Well, we have a lot of cases that involve guns. We don't necessarily track numbers of illegal versus legal. So, for instance, that case yesterday that was mentioned earlier, my understanding is that woman owned the gun. She was a registered owner. So, I mean, that would be a gun that's legal to possess, but wouldn't stop us from charging these enhancements or gun crimes depending on what's being done with that gun. So the fact that they own it legally doesn't stop them from being liable for misusing it.
I know that there's been some issues and controversies with regard to keeping data, national data on gun usage. Any thoughts on that?
No, it's not something I really thought about. I mean, I know that the FBI is keeping stats on a lot of different things, including gun use. We do keep some records, but it's not our primary focus to track trends. We're more of a reactive agency. We're taking the crime reports that the police provide us and making decisions about what crimes have been committed and can we prove them.
And what about the laws regulating gun purchases in the county? Can you help us with that one?
Yeah, I mean, that's state law as well. So, there are a number of additions that have been made over the years to try to tighten that up. So there's an application process It's under penalty of perjury, and you have to affirm that you don't have a felony in your background, for instance. Then a background check is done, a fingerprint check is done. There has to be a class taken for gun safety, and there's a waiting period. There are periods between which you can't buy additional guns. So I think it's 30 days before you can buy an additional handgun if you purchase one in the state. If you're bringing something in from out of state, you have to register it in California. So there's a whole panoply of regulatory rules and laws relating to gun possession.
If you were to maybe just identify one thing that you thought would be the most important thing for people to know about gun laws, is there anything in particular?
Well, I mean, I think the right to possess a gun obviously is an important one, but it's got to be done responsibly and safely. And so if you own a gun, don't take it to the airport because they're gonna find it and you're gonna be facing charges potentially. Don't misuse it. You know, if you have children in the home, that there are laws against not storing it properly if the child is hurt. So I think the takeaway message is it's a dangerous implement. You need to make sure that you're being careful with it and not abusing it, not misusing it.
All right. What about fully automatic weapons in California as well as maybe the county?
Totally illegal, right? Assault weapons, machine guns, all of those things are banned.
Right. But not in all states, right?
I'm not sure about other states. There might be some, obviously, where you can, California's pretty restrictive, and assault weapons, certainly machine guns, are banned in California.
Right. Is there any pending legislation we should be aware of?
Well, there's a lot of legislation that's constantly being proposed and evaluated. It's not something I'm particularly tracking, but I wouldn't be surprised to see continued efforts to address gun possession in the area of things like mental health issues, gun violence restraining orders. That was a recent development. So things that might enhance safety are things I think that'll be on the radar for the legislature.
And you did mention connection between abuse of guns and mental health issues, and it's something I know that's been a controversial issue nationwide, where many suggest that we shouldn't link the two. That and in many cases these aren't, most people that are mentally ill don't become violent.
Sure.
But
well, there are due process rights. Obviously,
Right.
we can't just take property, can't take guns, but there is a connection that has been seen with people who are acting out violently, sometimes with guns, because of mental health issues that are not being addressed. So there are regulations that do limit the ability for someone in that setting to continue to possess it, but they have rights to try to fight against that, maybe have that order lifted, and be able to get their guns back. So
certainly
it's a difficult
is an interesting, very interesting topic. So thanks a lot, Jim, for being here today. I appreciate it. So guns are not going away, not this month or this year or maybe ever. And maybe they shouldn't go away. Now, I'm not talking about military-style assault weapons. That's a different story. We live in a reality that includes guns, includes overcrowding, includes mental health pressures, includes drugs, and includes glorified images of violence fed to us through entertainment sources. We need to support our law enforcement community, our neighbors, and our families, and all work together towards a safer tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on Take Notice.